Hi, my name is Hannah Jane Pritchett, current U of A GIST Master's student. Welcome to the University of Arizona GIST podcast. Our host is Chris Luganbiel, and today he will be chatting with Gregory Christakos, product engineer at Esri. Let's get started.
Hello, my name is Chris Luganbiel. I'm the director of the GIST programs here at the University of Arizona. So I'm delighted to have with me today Gregory Christakos, who is a product engineer for Esri at the North Carolina office. Welcome, Gregory.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Nice to be here. Nice to be with you all.
Gregory was an alumni from the 2015 program, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, 2015.
From the
It's been a while.
MSGIST program. Yes, now it's been 5 years. It's crazy how time flies. How quickly did you go to Esri after the MSGIST program?
Let's see. Graduation was in December, and I started with Esri in March of the following year, so about 4 months afterwards.
Wow, that's pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Did you go straight to North Carolina as your first position?
Yeah, Esri, they gave me a choice between Redlands, California or Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was like, I'll give trees a shot. So I went to North Carolina and just drove across the country. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. It's good stuff.
How big is the Esri shop in Charlotte?
That's a good question. I want to say it used to be one building, one office with about maybe 250, 300 people. They've since split that into two offices. And now there's questions of like, where do we find more space? So Esri's continuing to expand in the Charlotte area. But yeah, I would say about 300 plus, give or take.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good sized regional office.
Well, to give a little bit of background, let's start with some generic question like, can you tell us a little bit about your GIS training and background? Like, how did you get into the career that you currently have?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, it starts with the GIST program actually, where it took all sorts of coursework on GIS and kind of learning the ins and outs of desktop GIS, a little bit of server GIS. And then during that time, I kind of did a little bit of volunteering with like the city of Sierra Vista in southern Arizona, where I did some just kind of continuing GIS work, just applying GIS in the field and stuff like that. It was also through the GIST program that I had a chance to like participate as an intern with Esri for the user conference back in 2015, and that's kind of where I got started with like a relationship with Esri. So yeah, that's kind of the beginning of it with the GIST program. And then as soon as I graduated and I kept kind of a relationship with Esri, I got started with Esri in 2016 through their support services. So at the time, Esri support services had an office in Redlands. That's where most support people are there. And then in Charlotte. And I think I was the first person to say, I'll go ahead and give Charlotte a shot. And yeah, so I kind of worked with about 100 people in Charlotte, 80 to 100 people, and kind of just took it from there as far as like developing all sorts of different skills. I was mainly a part of the ArcGIS server team, so supporting like enterprise level GIS. Some of this might sound familiar to you, like Portal for ArcGIS, ArcGIS server, all sorts of different web applications that integrate with that. And it was through the 2.5 years or so I was in support services that I developed an interest in real-time GIS as a concept. Specifically, Esri offers ArcGIS GeoEvent server, and that's where I kind of took an interest, just understanding, what is this real-time GIS stuff? How does this particular piece of software work? How do people apply real-time GIS in the real world? And just through demonstrating an interest and to a point of mastery with that, that led to opportunities to be on the real-time GIS team at Esri, the software development team. So yeah, that's kind of how that whole path went for me.
Tell me a little bit more about what it means for the real-time GIS, and is there a different product that Esri uses for that, or is that something built within ArcPro?
There's some aspects of real-time GIS through ArcGIS Pro, but mainly it's a separate product. Traditionally, it's been ArcGIS GeoEvent server, which is kind of a licensing extension of ArcGIS server.
Okay.
It enables like real-time capabilities for the enterprise ecosystem. So being able to bring in like real-time data, whether it's from like IoT devices, moving vehicles, stationary sensors, things like that. You bring that information in real time. Sometimes you perform analytics on it in real time and then output it or store it in some other place. So maybe you'll send an email based on an event that happens, geofencing, that sort of thing, or maybe you'll bring in hundreds of thousands of records and store that data over time. It's kind of the sky's the limit when it comes to real-time GIS. So
can you give an example of like maybe a current project that you've helped with a company or a government entity that uses the product?
we have a lot of both regional governments, like local governments, state governments, and federal governments that actually like to use ArcGIS GeoEvent server for snowplows, which is always interesting. A lot of these different municipalities, they like to track, what is the level of snow in an area, where are there snowplow vehicles in real time, what is the status of the streets as they plow these streets of snow, and then keep an update of that and actually relay that information sometimes not just within the public works department or whatever it might be, but back out to the public so that way like the community can know, hey, what's the status of my street, when was the last time it was cleared, that sort of thing. So that's kind of always a fun one, especially this time of the year now that it's getting colder. It's always like busy season for snowplows.
Wow, yeah,
So,
that sounds like a good public relations use of GIS too.
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's all about getting the spotlight on like what government's doing. So,
yeah, because I was thinking of like sensors for buses or on-time transit kind of would be a common one, but the snowplows sound much more intriguing.
Yeah, I mean that's common applications too. Any sort of tracking of vehicles, buses, metro trains, fleets of airplanes, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of some common use cases. Yeah.
So was that just an interest that you developed yourself while working with Esri, and then were allowed to kind of pursue that?
Yeah. Within kind of support services, like there's all sorts of products and software that we had to learn and support, and some are a little bit easier to kind of understand than others, and I think there was a need at the time for someone to learn GeoEvent server, and I thought it was cool seeing like features move on a map, and so I kind of dived into it and got kind of deep with understanding how does this thing work and how does this relate to everything else within the ArcGIS ecosystem, and yeah, just from demonstrating that interest and kind of mastering it over 2.5 years, I was able to get kind of a close connection with the product team and then move on from there. So yeah.
We've had a number of graduates go on to work with Esri, and it seems that the support services is sort of like the starting point for the career. But Esri seems to be like a wonderful company that if you show initiative and interest, that moving laterally or moving into specialized services or areas is allowed and very common within the company.
Oh, yeah.
Sound right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And there's former alumni from the GIST program who have the same kind of story that I do, where, we started in support, kind of found our little area where we really like the technology and just kind of constantly was troubleshooting and working around that technology, and it allowed us to kind of step up from support into like other areas like product development. So
yeah, and so I have to share with the podcasters out there the story that you well know, but and I don't even think this is up to date, but
boy, this picture, the
Wildcat takeover of Charlotte, because I think there's a couple more. There's at least one more now. There was a recent hire.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yep, this is the crew.
Did you? So what was it? What's the story behind? Like, were you one of the first of the Wildcats to go out to Charlotte, or?
Yeah, I think I was the first person from the University of Arizona to go out to the Charlotte office. And so it's always nice seeing other University of Arizona graduates come afterwards. it's fun.
Do
So.
you still see some of your cohort alumni? Well, I guess it's not all 2015 alumni. There's a good.
Right. Yeah. There's all sorts of new faces, that have come along, and so yeah, I see them from time to time. I mean, COVID aside, we've been home for the past couple months, but yeah, back when we were in the office, we'd see each other on a regular basis. Especially working in support, it was kind of a big open room, and we all worked with each other, so it was always fun. We started to build up quite the reputation, or the little cohort within support itself on the floor.
Yeah, I was thinking. I think it was last year. Carlos was the last alumni from here that got
Okay.
hired in Charlotte. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and there's other U of A alumni too, on the East Coast. We have like a DC regional office, and there's been some
Yes.
people who've went to DC, and so we constantly run into each other when we have to go from office to office too. So it's pretty
Oh,
neat
that's
stuff.
great.
Yeah.
Did you feel that when you were in the program here, and I know your work well, the work that you did with Sierra Vista, that you worked with the transportation and planning department, I think it was.
Yeah, the planning department there, they did transportation work, and the Sierra Vista Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Right.
Through all of that, yeah, did a lot of like data work with them and GIS work, and yeah.
Yeah, weren't they doing a long use land use planning modeling?
Yeah, a little bit of that, a long-term transportation plan, like one of those, 20-year long type plans where they try to figure out, you know, what are the needs of the community as far as transportation goes. If they were to get transportation dollars, how would they prioritize that money, that kind of plan. Yeah, and I helped a little bit with that. And I guess that's part of the reason why I got into real-time GIS was through that work of like working with transit and stuff and seeing how some of that works just kind of in a real-world application, tying that to the software. I don't know. It's really neat seeing that.
But I think that your case of doing that intern, because it was unusual in the sense that, you did a heck of a commute just to do a free, well, it was a non-paid intern to begin with. I think did they
Yeah,
ever give you some funding eventually, or?
they did. Yeah, I think
Yeah, which is
the first 2-3 months I was, yeah, driving down from Tucson to Sierra Vista every weekend, or every Friday, I think it was, if I recall correctly. Yeah, but that was about 2-3 months, and then finally the Metropolitan Planning Organization, they got a little bit of funding, and that helped out. So
Did you
going down
find
there.
that doing that, what extracurricular education helped improve your ability to, move forward with your career?
Yes, definitely. And to any kind of future U of A GIST student, I would definitely recommend doing some of the same things. Having that volunteer experience and being able to apply what we were learning in the classroom to the internship was instrumental because you learn the skills within the classroom, but then being able to apply them and gain that experience and kind of have that at your disposal. Definitely, it's huge. Both kind of went hand in hand for me.
And did that reference help you obtain your position as well too?
Definitely, yes. Yeah, when interviewing for support services, that was kind of a big thing. I was able to lean on and demonstrate some of those skills. And I think the Esri at the time, they came out for like the master's presentations and saw kind of the end result of some of that. So yeah, definitely.
That's right. That was back in the years when they would hire a third of the class
Yeah.
right off. Yeah, I think yours was the last class that they came out. No, it was mainly because the cohort sizes for in person got a lot smaller after
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so it wasn't financially feasible to do it in person interview. Right. They continue to do them online. Yeah.
Cool.
But so, what types of GIS skills are necessary to perform your current job now? And can you give us a few examples of
Sure.
how GIS works in your day-to-day career right now?
Yeah, so I guess a little bit of background, like a product engineer at Esri, on a product team at least. What we people in my role primarily do is we help developers with product development. So implementing like new ideas, new types of tools, new ways of doing workflows, things like that. We see kind of what the community's doing as far as their GIS work is concerned, and then we try to build tools to support that. And so with that, the job doesn't stop there once we develop these tools. It's a lot of troubleshooting, documentation writing, community engagement, demonstrations, things like that. So I like to think that in order to like create these new features in the product, you really have to apply just about everything GIS. You got to understand kind of the tools, the workflows, what's the real world use case for what it is that we're doing. To write about it, got to know the terminology or the lingo around it. Yeah, I can't think of an area where I don't really apply GIS. So yeah.
But you're doing it a little differently too. It seems as a product engineer, where you have to have a big picture kind of concept of. It's more than just GIS. It's spatial thinking as well as product management and implementation.
Yeah, definitely. We have to kind of think outside the box. Like I think with a lot of GIS roles or a lot of GIS work, we're tasked with a problem, and then we try to use the tools to solve that problem. I guess as product engineers and working with the community, we have the benefit of seeing, how are multiple organizations trying to solve a particular problem or set of problems, and then we try to like build a tool that could help address those problems. So it's different. It's kind of like flipped on its head a little bit, but that's part of the fun. So
it sounds like problem solving and seeing if there's sort of general principles that could apply across a problem that multiple organizations are experiencing.
Right.
Well, yeah. Can you think of an example or a case where you've helped solve a problem that's been useful across more than one agency or company?
Yeah, I think with the product I work on being ArcGIS GeoEvent Server and recently with ArcGIS Velocity, a lot of like the product development we do is maybe built around features and tools. So I think a recent example is a lot of people like to use RealTime GIS to be notified of when interesting events occur. So for example, when did a vehicle enter a particular service area that it wasn't supposed to go in? I want to be notified of that in an email. Kind of a problem that happens with that sort of workflow where we're sending out emails based on events is that if the vehicle is lingering in the area for too long and we have some sort of trigger set where we want to send an email, every 10 seconds we're checking to see if this vehicle's in there, you can run into a situation where, you're getting an email every 10 seconds about a vehicle being somewhere. And it's kind of gets to the point where you're like, okay, I know something's happening the first time. You don't have to keep spamming me with emails. So we implemented a tool called like the event volume controller, which allows us to kind of observe for unique events, unique features, like a unique license plate, and say, okay, if this license plate, if we got a notification for this license plate in the last hour, don't send another email out about that license plate, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of an example of like a tool that I helped develop with a team of developers to implement, and then going back to the snowplow example, being able to roll that out so that way, all sorts of organizations were able to use that. So if something like, I want to know when a snowplow is stalled on the road for more than 10 minutes where it's not moving, send me an email. We're able to control how often those messages get sent. So if it's stalled for 10 minutes, 11 minutes, half an hour, they're not continuously getting spammed. So that's kind of a minutia example, but that's an area where tool we helped build within the product has been able to be applicable to multiple organizations.
It makes me think of the I in the information systems more than the G in a way, where that it really shows that use of GIS is getting current information in terms of a locational sense to the users in a way that they need to hear it, but then they could also get overwhelmed with too much information if you're not, if it's not established, the system isn't established correctly. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And yeah, real-time GIS, as the name implies, it's all about needing to know the information now. So a lot of what we think of with GIS is, post-processing. I have a batch of
Yes.
data, I'm running a tool on it to perform some sort of analysis. Um, I'm getting a result, and then I'm able to create like a map with that result, or uh, come up with some sort of conclusion. Whereas real-time GIS is more so, I need to know when things are happening now, and be notified of it now so I can act on it now. It's a little bit different, but
Well, it seems like logistics planning would be common themes for this with public agencies and private agencies. But I could also see like what disaster relief, disaster recovery kinds of uses, as well as in the intelligence and defense communities.
yep, all those. You hit
Do
the nail on the head. Yeah.
you find like certain segments of industry that are more apt to use real-time GIS?
Yeah. Transportation is a big one. Um, yeah, transportation, private industry, but that's related to transportation. Definitely defense and intel. Yeah, a lot of public works like to use that as well. Anything where there's kind of a fleet that you need to track, or
Got it.
a a network of sensors. A lot of the time we think of real-time GIS as like tracking vehicles or airplanes, but it could be, monitoring, like a river gauge or a temperature gauge to make sure systems are functioning the way they are, and that's kind of an area where you see it be used in like environmental science and stuff, is to like monitor, water gauges and weather gauges and stuff like that. Real-time GIS can also be to monitor things that just happen as well. So like lightning strikes, uh, crime, things that just happen at a particular moment in time, and it's not guaranteed to happen again. We see that too. So to that point, I think utilities are another area where a lot of real-time GIS is used. Monitoring like a power grid, for example, and monitoring sensors on that power grid, and even monitoring the crews that go out to fix it. When a lightning strike happens, you want the crew to get away from the power lines. Like, let's notify all that. That's all real-time GIS. Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of, and I think it was last year's keynote with Jack Dangerman, where he was referring to GIS as more as a neural network, where like the idea that it's more on call, it's not just post processing. It's problem solving, but the time frame is now.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of GIS, from where I sit, I might be a little bit biased, but a lot of it's going away from like traditional desktop GIS, where we're producing some sort of geographic product and creating a map out of it, to distributing information in real time or semi real time to like a system of some sort, or a network of users. So like for public agency, or um, like the examples I mentioned with real-time GIS just a second ago, I see a lot of it moving towards that, and all these applications that kind of integrate to support that. Whether it be surveys or fieldwork data collection applications, all of that is being really used to obtain information in real time. Definitely see it going that way.
Well, it seems too that if you're dealing with real time data in a net, like are you like at an enterprise scale, are you then having to deal more with getting data to talk to each other, or like being able to do, how do you get data streams from different agencies or different servers to communicate live with each other to be able to do real-time analysis or real-time functions?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there sort of like a whole new kind of language of information that then you have to embrace too?
Yeah, definitely. I think as the Internet of Things, it's kind of like a buzzword, but as the Internet of Things kind of takes off and we have all these connected devices, I mean, whether it be something as simple as like a weather gauge or temperature gauge, all the way to like, your smartphone, or, Alexa, or your refrigerator or
Yeah.
something, we're seeing that all this information can be brought into a GIS, and be used to do some sort of analysis that might not have been possible or thought of maybe 10, 20 years ago, that sort of thing. So yeah, and then trying to understand and build a system that can like handle all those various data formats from all those different applications. That's quite the challenge, but we're working on it. Yeah.
I guess that's kind of leads to my next question, which is in that way of the Internet of Things, the multiple sensors or the sensor arrays and getting direct access to live sensor data. Is there? It seems like it's taking you and the sort of the GIS industry as a whole and kind of into a new area of skills and technologies.
Oh yeah.
And what kind of skills do you have to then, like, what's on the horizon for you as being the product engineer in this area that you see coming down the pike that, hey, I got to keep up with this or I'm going to get behind in my career?
I think for me, it's cloud computing. That's a real big thing that is becoming more and more important within real-time GIS and just GIS in general. So understanding, Amazon or Azure, some of the systems they provide to support, the real-time ingestion of like IoT data and facilitating that. That's probably the number one area that I see within my own work of having to understand that. And then in general, just kind of staying on top of like industry trends, like what's the next biggest data format or data provider, like what's the, the big exciting thing. I think right now, like, Apache Kafka is like a distributed system like that seems to be like a hot topic. So just staying on top of some of those types of things for like bringing in real-time GIS, whether it's one record every second or 100,000 records every second or 1 million records a second, like those types of technologies that can support those things and bringing in that kind of data. It's always changing, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I talked a little bit about GeoEvent server. So ArcGIS GeoEvent server has been kind of the traditional enterprise GIS. That's the product that I primarily have worked on since being a product engineer in the last 2 years. And that's what Esri has kind of offered for the last 8 or so years for ingesting real-time data, performing analytics on real-time data, and then creating outputs with that real-time data. But yeah, we did just recently release a new product called ArcGIS Velocity, which in some ways is an extension of ArcGIS Online. And it performs a lot of those same functions of bringing in data from the cloud or IoT devices, performing analytics, real-time analytics on that data, and then storing that data or creating notifications based on that data. That just came out, a couple months ago, I think.
Velocity, okay.
Yeah. So that's going to be kind of the next big exciting thing for us, at least my team, and Esri in general. So
it analyzes real-time big data. So it's a cloud native platform that plugs into AGOL is the idea?
yeah, it's it's an extension of ArcGIS Online. So just like you might sign into ArcGIS Online and have all your map services and feature services, ArcGIS Velocity is an extension application. So you would access it through ArcGIS Online, and it has its own interface and UI, but it allows you to configure what we call feeds, which is basically like a way of bringing in real-time data, whether it's something like pulling from Apache Kafka or pulling some website for RSS feed or whatever, HTTP, that kind of thing, WebSockets, all that good stuff. Bring the data in, and then we have all these tools that perform kind of geoprocessing in real time on that data that you bring in through a feed. And then you could create kind of informational products from that to perform like analysis, filtering, identify key events that are of importance to you, geographic change, that sort of thing. And then we have outputs. So how are you getting that data out once you have what you're looking for? Do you want to be notified in an email or a text message, or do you want to send that information to some other system so that way it can act on that information? Or do you want to notify a person or store it or display it on a map? So write that maybe out to a feature layer that is then used in some web map or dashboard for the public or an organization. So
how is Velocity different from GeoEvent?
yeah, the big difference is ArcGIS Velocity is following the software as a service model. So it's entirely hosted in the cloud. It's managed by Esri. There's no installation involved, no management from like an environment point of view for the end user. Whereas ArcGIS GeoEvent server being an extension kind of ArcGIS server, it involves that the organization is the one to install it and kind of manage its infrastructure and
Got
that
it.
sort of thing. And then because ArcGIS Velocity is software as a service and it's in the cloud, it can scale far beyond what GeoEvent server is capable of. And yeah, we like to kind of cite, GeoEvent server as of the latest release can handle approximately 10,000 events per second in terms of bringing that data in, whereas ArcGIS Velocity can scale well beyond that, 100,000 plus. So, and that it's scalable to who knows what extent. So we're working through some of that, but yeah, a lot more data can be brought in, a lot more data stored, and because it's not something that is restricted by your infrastructure, there's potential to do a lot more analysis and storage of data and whatnot. So
is it kind of the similar distinction between if your corporation or city or entity has gotten large enough that you need an enterprise server, or can you just work with AGOL independently without the need of a server? Is it kind of mimicking that distinction?
yeah, kind of. It really just depends on what the needs are of the organization. So if you're kind of a mom and pop shop and you already have your installation of ArcGIS server and you have GeoEvent, you're maybe tracking, I don't know, 10 sensors somewhere. Yeah, GeoEvent's certainly an appropriate way to go. But yeah, if you're a bigger organization that is collecting data from around the globe and you have thousands, hundreds of thousands, whatever it might be, of records per minute or per second coming in, you might end up needing to stand up multiple instances of GeoEvent to try to accomplish that, and that can become a little bit challenging. So that's maybe where ArcGIS Velocity would be more of an appropriate solution. So it really just depends on like what your existing infrastructure is, and to an extent, if like you're an organization that uses ArcGIS Online already and you don't touch anything enterprise, or the opposite. So yeah.
Have you gotten involved at all, or is this a different division for Esri, with any work, real-time events with the pandemic at all, with the COVID?
Yeah, that's been kind of an Esri-wide sort of effort this year, supporting a lot of that. I think a big example of, or success story, I think, around COVID, you might have seen it, is the dashboard. What's the name of that dashboard?
John
There's
Hopkins.
the John Hopkins COVID-19 dashboard.
Yeah.
That touches on so many different teams. You got the operations dashboard team that creates the dashboard, the ArcGIS Online team that helps manage the web map and the scalability of that. Some of that information would certainly be brought in, maybe by applications like GeoEvent server, for kind of that real-time situational awareness. So we've certainly, as a team, have had a bit of a hand in that, but that's a company-wide effort, and there's a whole team of like solution engineers that support that, and yeah, that's kind of that.
Yeah, no, that one's pretty exciting too, as well. I was just thinking of another case in point for real time and current. I mean, we did a podcast with the U of A's efforts on contact tracing.
Oh, cool.
And it had kind of a similar thing where it was real time. They weren't really doing GIS per se, and they were relying on Bluetooth technologies to pick up of two phones and pass each other, and then to be able to pull anonymously data. I mean, kind of a similar effort, but it was differently configured, I guess.
Yeah, we've done a little bit of contact tracing, like workflows or scenarios, like within our own team, kind of like a proof of concept sort of thing, just to kind of push ArcGIS Velocity in particular, kind of in one direction, just to see what could be done. So yeah, we've done some of that where, yeah, tracking, like maybe like if you're a particular business and like who's in what office, and as like an opt-in thing, like tracking like a cell phone with like a tracker or something. If you opt in, you can see where are people moving, and kind of record locations, and if somebody reports to be sick or whatever, notify like who was within contact of that person, like within an office space. That was kind of like a demo concept that we were messing around with. So yeah, that seems to be solutions around that seem to be a pretty popular topic right now, trying to figure out some of that. But yeah, not too much on the real-time side.
Yeah.
Have we been involved with that? So
So let's looking back on your budding GIS career, and you're coming out of the UA GIST group as well. Like, what were some of the biggest things now that you could say that helped you succeed with your career?
From like the GIST program, I would say.
Yeah, there as
Yeah.
well as since then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think within the GIST program, the pace in which we touched on new topics, from desktop GIS, I think we did a week or two of like server GIS, a week of Python. That's been really helpful. Just kind of getting exposed to these topics and having just a little bit of experience has really helped me, especially like once I was within a support role, right? Because once you have to troubleshoot a problem around that, you kind of have that starting point of reference. So that's been really important from the program point of view. And then, like I mentioned before, with the volunteering, at the city of Sierra Vista, getting kind of that real world application experience, that's been really helpful as well. And it still continues to be helpful in my current role, because oftentimes when we're designing new features and testing things and building things and writing documentation, we have to keep in mind like who's the end user, how's this going to be used, like how practical is this, are we building these things with those people in mind? So that is something I always keep in the back of my head when I do my own work personally. So that's been very helpful. And then within support services, it was a wonderful position to be in, because all you're doing all day is troubleshooting problems. And so you're touching on different pieces of technology and different concepts and learning new things. 1 minute you'll pick up the phone and you'll be helping someone with survey 1, 2, 3. How do I get my surveys to come in correctly, or how do I create this correct survey to better some public usage type scenario, all the way to, I don't know, I think I had one example of someone, I forgot the name of the city, but they had like horses and like horse-drawn carriages, and they were kind of tracking horse-drawn carriages and seeing like where did the horses stop and where did they have to go and clean up after the horses. It's just kind of funny. It's just so far-fetched, like the scenarios you come across and the technology involved with it, that
Oh, that's great.
yeah, that's been really helpful. So it's kind of always a fun one that sticks in the back of my head. Never thought I'd get on a call to hear that, but yeah.
That's what micromanaging real-time GIS, that we don't
Yeah.
get into that subject today, but
Yeah.
Well, and one item that I think, and you're far too humble, so I have to say it, that I think that you're a good example of somebody that's excited about what they do and has a passion for lifelong learning. And I think that shows, it definitely shows in my interactions with you, but that if you can show that too in your career, that positive things will come, because then you'll always be excited, enjoy what you're doing, and the people that you're working for and with are going to pick up on it too.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd agree. I think, if there's any future students out there considering the program or coming into the program, or, members of the GIS community, looking to do things a little bit differently, I think what's helped me a lot, or what I try to do, is like try to take on something new and challenging whenever you get the chance. Like kind of, push the limits of what it'll take you places. You'll definitely learn new things, and opportunities will will open up in front of you. So don't shy away from the difficult. That's what I would say. So,
Well,
learning. Yeah.
On that note, Greg, it's been a delight to have you with us today on the UAGIST podcast, and it's wonderful to see your career budding and taking off. And it's also great to know that the Wildcats have taken over Charlotte as well. If you're looking for more Wildcats, please, you know where to look for some.
Yeah. No, thank you, Chris. This has been awesome. It's nice keeping in touch, and I'll do a shameless plug. If there's any students, the UA GIST program interested in RealTime GIS, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Be happy to work with you, or just see what we could do. It's definitely a fascinating topic, and I'm always looking to try to get some more U of A people in the Charlotte office to keep taking over. It's always fun. So thanks again.
Hey, thanks a lot, Greg.
Thanks.